Hi, I'm Steven. That's Patrick. That's John. We're from Just Got Played, and we are gaming through themes. So what does that mean? Well, we like to talk about board games and card games. And when we talk about them, we did a whole series on mechanisms, which is how you interact with the game. But the theme is basically the subject matter of the game. So, the art, the actions you're doing, things like that, these typically work thematically in some games. And the theme that we're talking about today is racing. So we're talking about racing games, and different people have a different opinion on what evokes racing to them, which is all right. But let's start it off with John. What does it mean to be a racing game to you? And what is your favorite racing game?
Well, I think to be a racing game thematically, it has to start everybody at the same point, and you're trying to get to the same point. And once somebody crosses a finish line of sorts, and it can be anything, either the game ends immediately and they win, or you finish that round and then you measure to see who's the furthest. I think those are the components you need to make a racing game. So there's several games that fit that, but they have other things going on with them. But they're still considered racing games because they do hit those check marks. And for me, my favorite racing game is Flamme Rouge. Flamme Rouge is a bicycle racing game, which is very unfortunate because while I love it, the theme's not exciting enough to get it onto the table. I'll bring it, people go, I don't want to race bikes, But it's a fantastic game. It really is. Heat, a new game that came out, is taking a lot from Flamme Rouge, from its base core design, because it really does have a lot of fun mechanisms. But what makes it so fun thematically is that you build the racetrack before you start the game, and you can build your own, or there's different templates that you can use. But in the expansion, they added things like cobblestone roads and different things like that just really evokes a bicycle race to me. It really feels like you're racing the bikes, and then you're nudging each other, you're drafting off each other, and all that really just comes together to be my favorite racing game because of the combination of theme and mechanics.
Yeah, so I like Flamme Rouge too. It's not one of my favorite racing games, but bicycle racing is sort of interesting because you get those packs of people and you get teams, where somebody is out in front, breaking the wind or whatever you call it, to pull everybody behind them. And, I like it. I like in that Flamme Rouge game that you've got the thing where, I don't know, is at the end of each round or whatever, where people sort of catch up to the pack. Yeah. And so I like the theme of bike racing, even if, it's harder to get to the table. And then I like some of the choices they've made in gameplay that sort of match that theme, that make the game more interesting than just your average sort of racing game. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. So Patrick, what does it mean to have a racing game for you, and what's your favorite?
It has to evoke that feeling that you're starting in the same position and you're going to finish at the same spot, and whoever finishes first wins. Having said that, I'm going to mention two games that don't fit that very, very well. And I might mention a third game, or at least we can talk about a third game that I feel really does a good job of it, and does it via a press your luck style, which I really enjoyed. But this one was fairly popular, and when you sit down and play it, if you play it with a good group of people, and I know this applies to a lot of games, but a good group of people that are laughing and having a good time, it's not a super competitive game. But Camel Up is a purely racing themed game. It's got a bunch of goofy little crap going on. You can stack camels on top of each other, but it doesn't really feel ultra competitive like a racing game should. Although this is a racing game, I do enjoy it a lot, and I think it's pretty popular.
It does hit those elements still. The camels still have to start at the same place, finish at the same place, all that. So it does hit those elements, like you said, but you're not really participating. You're just in the stands betting on them. So I definitely see what you're saying with it being an outlier, but I would still put it in the category.
Yeah, I mean, I think that fits, right? Because because one of my choices later is going to be similar, but just because you're betting on a race doesn't make it a racing game. I mean, you really care about which of those camels is going to get forward, which one's going to finish in what order. And you do, move the camels, even if you don't specifically own, say, one of the camels, you're still making the decision to roll the dice, and you're rolling the die, and you really care about, like I said, how they move, and where, not only at the end where they are, actually how they're doing in the different legs of the race too. So yeah. And in fact, yeah, go ahead, John.
You can't disqualify a racing game because if you're doing the betting, because betting is so heavily tied to racing in the first place that it could be its own element, especially if you're talking horse racing, bike racing, dog racing, anything like that. Betting is heavily tied to it. So I think that those still fit in that category because it really is part of racing.
Yeah. And, I could name off 3 really good games where all you do is bet on races. No problem. So it's an interesting thing for board games. And I actually Camel Up was one that I considered to be in my top 2, but it just didn't quite make the cut. It did pretty well in the people's poll as well, but spoiler alert, it did not finish in the 1 or 2 spot for the people's
Hope
poll.
You didn't bet on it.
Yeah, exactly. But my number one, first I want to say that there are a lot of games that have a race element in them and that you're sort of racing to a goal, right? So there's Can't Stop, where you're trying to race up these tracks, or there's Transamerica where you're racing to be the first to connect your cities, or Race for the Galaxy where you're racing to fill up your tableau or get the most, or to deplete the victory points or whatever. That's sort of racing, but that doesn't feel thematically like racing to me. So I didn't pick any of those types of games.
Race for the Galaxy is a race to try to remember all the symbols.
Yeah,
that's the real race.
Yeah. He who remembers them all wins, I guess. Yeah. This should just be a quiz at the end. Mm-hmm. Like Trivial Pursuit, but with Race for the Galaxy symbols. All right. But anyway, my number one game definitely feels like a racing game. It is all about racing, and the first person across the finish line wins, damned if you've had an equal number of turns or not. And that is Formula D. And so, if you've been following along on the channel, Formula D is one of my favorite games of all time. And that is because, one, it plays with a lot of people without an issue. You could play 10 players in the base game. I actually have gotten a couple of extra painted cars, so we'll play with 12. And it just hums along, we just play the basic rules and we play 1 lap. So, you can have a large number of people. And as long as you have somebody sort of coordinating, say, okay, it's your turn, go, 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 keep the game moving. It goes pretty quickly. And it's so simple to teach because on your turn, you're just deciding, am I going to gear up or gear down? And then you roll a die that matches that gear. And all you really need to know is you need to understand how your car can take damage, right? So you're trying to stop in these corners. And if you overshoot the corners, you can take damage. And if you get up next to another player, you might take damage. That's basically it. You're just trying to push your luck, essentially. Like, you want to stay in the higher gear because coming out of a corner, usually you want to roll a bigger die that lets you go further. So you want to go into that corner in the gear as high as possible. But if you roll a really high number on that gear, you can overshoot the corner and take a lot of damage. And then you've got to, worry about that the rest of the race. So it's got that sort of, chance element to it. But the game isn't ruined by chance either. I mean, some games can be ruined by chance, but this game, you roll so many dice that it sort of evens out, over time. Definitely you can have somebody who just hits the die roll every corner and runs away with the game. And definitely you could be in the situation where you're just missing every time. But it's just funny, like I've never seen anybody really, well, except for Kevin, I've never seen anybody else get upset over their die rolls in this game, right? Because you're not going to get a perfect die roll. You're not going to have the perfect
Didn't he
thing
explode
happen.
like in the first straightaway or something?
I don't know. I can't remember why he hates this game, but I think it's just he can't handle the randomness, right?
Sure.
But there are other racing games out there that sort of mitigate the randomness too. So maybe that's for him. But anyway, that's my number one game, far and away one of my favorite games of all time, much less my favorite racing game, Formula D. All right. For number 2, let's go back to Patrick.
So for number 2, I was going to pick Steampunk Rally. I enjoyed the game. I think that now it violates everything we've just talked about, right? But it does have a little bit of a push your lust aspect. New style game. I'll show you guys.
Don't do that.
After the
Coming soon to shelves near you. Push your lust by Patrick.
Can we get a top 10 push your lust games list, please?
Oh, that'll be the next one.
Yeah.
Push your luck. aspect to it. And it's, I don't know, as you're racing along and things are going well for you, it's kind of a fun little thing. Now, the problem with it is the first one across the finish line that doesn't necessarily win the race, right? It's the one that went the furthest after you cross the finish line. So that involves some extra strategy too, but it's just not thematically comfortable for a racing game. So that was one I was going to mention. But while I'm here, I'm going to jump in and say, I believe that Push Your Luck should be an integral aspect to a racing game. And the one I was going to mention is really old. It's made by Avalon Hill, and it's called United States Auto Club. And it's essentially,
that looks vintage.
It is. It's a 1980s game, and I purchased it a few years ago. It's a game that my wife played when she was a kid, and she absolutely loves it. It's got a 2-page instruction booklet. It's a little loosey-goosey, right? I mean, it is what it is, but it does highly involve Push Your Luck. You can charge, and at that point, if you're charging, you have a higher chance of messing up into a corner or messing up when you're chasing somebody. So I think that game you can't buy it anymore. You can't find it. And if you're a real rule stickler, you can absolutely hate me for mentioning it. But I think that game does include some Push Your Luck aspects, and it really is a racing game. When you cross the finish line, you've won. So, all right, that's it. I've made a no and violated our theme, and also given you a good thematic one.
Wait, how many players is that? Is that like a 4 or 6?
A lot.
Hey, now you're talking my language.
Well, it's from the 80s, so all you're really doing is drawing a line on a piece of paper, and everyone gets their own pen and paper. It's easy.
It is not. It's not the first series of Dungeons and Dragons.
Do you roll 2 dice and auction properties? No.
I don't know a lot.
I'll look it up on Board Game Geek. It's fine.
Well, it doesn't have it nicely on the box. This thing was made in the 1980s. So
I know. I don't know when they started putting those helpful little infographics you expect on boxes, but
it was definitely after 1990. It was after that.
Nice. Well, I think Patrick and I are somewhat on the same wavelength here because, as you know, for those people who have seen my top 100 and some other videos here, I have picked Steampunk Rally many times on many lists. But when it came down to it, it did not feel like a strong racing game to me. It is a racing game. You are racing. That is the point of the game. But with these thematic videos, I'm trying to think of things that, evoke the theme for me. And what you said about, you get past the finish line and that just triggers the last turn where people go, etc. That doesn't really feel so much like a racing game. And even the whole put my machine together and run the parts. I mean, it feels like an engine builder and a dice manipulation game. It just doesn't feel like a racing game. As much as some of these other games to me. So, if I were just saying, hey, what are my favorite games? Sure, Steampunk Rally would be up there. But the game that I also really love and have mentioned on the channel before, but really brings the racing theme to life for me is very similar to Camel Up in that you are just betting, but you are betting on the horses. And this is Winner's Circle. So in Winner's Circle, we like to play the version, and I don't know if this is the variant or the standard one where your bets are hidden, right? So, and in fact, so you have like the 2 bet, the 1 bet, and a 0 bet, and I actually even have another 0 bet because I have extra pieces. So you bet on the horses that are available in the race, but you could be bluffing, like people think you're betting on that horse or whether you're not, right? So you do all that. Everybody puts out their bets on these horses, and then on your turn you roll a die. And the die it's a D6 and it has 3 horse heads. So the horse head is 50%, of the results. And then you've got, a saddle and a helmet and a riding crop or something. So you've got these three other symbols that come up, less frequently. So the horses, when you look at them, and this is a Kinesia game, so it's got a perfect dice probability distribution, that horses that move faster on the horse head, they don't move that fast on the horse head, and then they're bad with the other symbols. And then there are other horses that do badly on every symbol, but really fast on one symbol. And so what you do is you roll the die on your turn, and then you look at what symbol you rolled, and then you pick the horse that you want to move. So you could, roll the helmet and be like, wow, yeah, I bet on the 2 horse and he moves 9 spaces with the helmet. I'm going to move that horse really far. And then you sort of push that horse out of rotation because every horse has to move before another horse can move again. And because of that interesting mechanism, you could say, well, I rolled the helmet and none of the horses that I'm betting on actually do very well with the helmet. So here's a horse that I'm not betting on, and the helmet is awful for that horse. It only moves 1 space. So I'm going to move it 1 space because it's not one of my horses. Right. And so you get this thing where you're trying to get people to work with you, like, yeah, you rolled the saddle, move this horse that we're working on together. And then they don't move it. You find out that was their bluff. They weren't really betting on it. You're like, am I alone on this horse, trying to move it. And so you're trying to get people to, basically, rally your horse with you. So that's really, it sort of invokes the racing theme, right? Like, I really want my pony to win. Help my pony win. Come on, it goes up to 6 players and it plays pretty quickly again because it's just roll a die, move a horse on your turn, and then go, right? And you actually do 3 different races during the course of one gameplay, and everybody just has fun playing it because it's almost like a party game, a party game atmosphere. I wouldn't say it's really a party game because you care about winning in this game more so than most party games, but yeah. Winner's Circle, and there have been some really good and not so good productions of the game. If you are interested in betting games, betting on racing games, this is one of my favorite ones. All right, so John, what is your number 2?
Ave Caesar. No. If you ever had the chance to play Ave Caesar, don't. No, I had a different game in mind for my second place, but having listened to your spiel right there, I actually changed my mind in the last second to say that my second favorite game is not Winner's Circle, but is very similar to it, and it's Ready, Set, Bet. I've only played this game twice now, but everything you just said about Winner's Circle, it has that, but it really feels like you're standing around a track and yelling like a bit, bet on this, bet this, moving this around. And that it has a really great app that you don't even have to use, but it can add some flavor to it and make it so that you don't have to have someone rolling the dice. So it has all that stuff that you just said in that, but I also think it's a more modern version of it. And it probably is the most thematic betting / racing game that I can think of. So I am going to go with Ready, Set, Bet. And for those that don't know how it works, it's very similar. You have the horses, but the number 6 horse moves slower whenever it's rolled because it's more likely to come up. But the 12 and the 1 or the 12 and the 2, whenever they get multiple rolls in a turn, it can zoom ahead. So it's got that handicap of it. 12 doesn't get rolled that much, but if you get a good streak of luck, that thing can zoom. And when I played it for the first time, I bet all of my money on 12 because the first 2 rounds I did terribly. I lost my money. I was scrounging through looking for winning tickets under seats. I had nothing. I went all in on the 12 in the last round, and it won against all odds, and I won the game because of that. So I think that's probably my favorite board gaming moment with a racing game. So for that reason, I'm going to bump up Ready, Set, Bet to number 2.
Yeah, I like that story, and I knew as soon as you said you were, talking about not Winner's Circle, I knew what you were talking about, and I knew that story because I was there when you did that, and that just makes me think that Formula D, Winner's Circle, like I have memorable moments from playing those games where I got screwed or I succeeded or somebody else had an epic play, at the game, and I love that about racing games. I mean, you don't get that in a lot of the Euro games, is the ones with these sort of randomness thrown in, I guess, where you get those, extra surprising and fun moments. I mean, there are moments to Euro games too, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's more common and I have more memorable moments from these types of games. I don't know. Is that just me or?
No, I agree. It's very rare for a non-party game to evoke a jumping reaction where everyone jumps out of their chair. I can't believe that just happened, because it's usually strategy or really luck based. But in this, you can have those tense moments where there's 3 horses about to cross and everyone's bet differently and everyone's on the edge of their seat. So for a non-purely social game that can do that, I think that's a pretty cool thing.
I think it's an amazing thing. Is it? And you know what? We should ask anybody watching to maybe give us their opinion down below. Is it as cool to be on the edge of your seat because there's some risk involved that's all about to happen and everybody's on pins and needles at the last moment? Is that as cool as it is frustrating for a hardcore strategist to have luck involved in their games? We've all met people that don't want to play a game that lasts an hour and a half that has any luck whatsoever. They want to win or lose on their own strategy. Are you that way, John?
That's me to a T. If I spend an hour and a half exerting my brain and trying my best and I lose, I'm okay with that. If I spend that hour and a half trying my best and I lose because of a random element, I'm not okay with that. I don't mind losing. I mind losing to RNG and take that.
Well, everyone hates losing to take that, I think.
Sure. But so the reason I mentioned that is I put the two in the same category. Heavy luck in a strategy game is equal to take that in my list of things I don't like.
Well, that sounds like fighting words. Everybody start writing in the comment section about that.
Well, hold on. It depends on the take that. If it's some random card that somebody drew out of a deck and they just plonk it on you, that's one thing. If it's they built up an army and invaded your territory, that was a whole strategic element. You saw that coming. That's a different kind of take that.
So right? When I say losing to luck, I mean you play an hour and 25 minutes of a game and it's going really well, and at the last minute something just sweeps. I didn't know that card existed and it completely ruined my strategy. There's a few games like that, including Lockup, which I wanted to love, but unfortunately it has that element to it. But if it's luck, I also love luck in games. Like Las Vegas is one of my favorite games. That game is nothing but luck. It's nothing but take that. It's the two things I hate the most in a strategy game combined. And I love it because you go in knowing that, number one. And number two, it's not this hour and a half affair where you're just trying your best to keep your brain from exploding, to outthink other players, to have that swept out from under you. So keep my strategy out of my luck games. We'll put them in separate boxes and I'll play them at different times.
Well, that's perfectly acceptable. I would get that. But keep in mind that the one time that you really loved when luck came into play for you when you were way, way down on your luck. And all of a sudden everyone else was doing while you blew them all away.
No, because I don't feel good being down by 20 points and I drew the right card I needed and got 30. Like I didn't feel like I earned that victory. So I don't like it in either side of the fence.
Well, I can tell you, everybody at the table was pretty impressed with your ready, set, bet victory. Nobody felt bad that you won, right?
Yeah,
so we'll put it that way.
99% of that game, I was broke.
Yeah. So also, I have to say that I know what game got bumped from your number 2 just now while we were talking. So, well, yeah. I mean, I think I know, right?
Was it a Press Your Lust game?
I think it's a game.
Press all the lust.
I think it's a game that is very similar to his first game, Flamme Rouge, and that is Heat, pedal to the metal. So
that is correct.
If you are looking for the new hotness in racing games, that is it. It is literally racing up the Board Game Geek rankings as we speak.
He was my second by far. The only reason, again, it was your rousing speech. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I pressed my lust when it came up time to talk about it. That was number 2. And number 3, the only reason I was willing to change it is because Heat takes a lot from Flamme Rouge. It really does. And that's not a bad thing. You steal from the greats and you build upon it. That's how you make a great game. But there is a lot of overlap between the two. So I went a little more social with the check-in.
Well, for that reason. I wouldn't be surprised after you get a few more plays of Heat under your belt if it sort of replaced Flamme Rouge at that number 1 spot for you. So
it might, simply because I can get at the table. Like, hey, you want to race a NASCAR car? Yeah. You want to race bikes? I got to go wash my hair.
All right. Well, I surveyed the people. So the people have a voice, and the people have, well, normally it's 2, but in this case, they had a number 1, and then we had 2 games tied for number 2. So, but let's start off with the number 1. The number 1 People's Choice. I'm going to throw it back to John because he's played this most recently of all of us, and is a classic from 1994, and that is RoboRally.
There's 2 things you think of when you think Richard Garfield, and that's Magic the Gathering and RoboRally.
King of Tokyo.
I don't play that game. Too much luck. Anyway, with RoboRally, it's an interesting choice because it doesn't really fit any of the criteria that I listed, and the people are going to have different viewpoints on that, of course. But essentially, everybody has their own robot, and it's actions programming. So you put 5 cards in front of you, and then everyone flips them up at the same time, and you move, you rotate, you move again. There's laser beams firing at you, and you are racing through the factory trying to get to the checkpoints. But you can literally take a robot and throw them off the edge of a cliff. So it definitely throws a wrench, pun intended, into that normal play style of racing. But it's kind of like a Mario Kart style game. You're moving around, you're trying to bump into other players and knock them off of what they were doing while you try to get all 3 flags. Whoever gets the 3 flags wins. But over time, as you take damage, it kind of clogs up your locked-in spaces, and your robot's just off doing wonky things and doing 360s. And it's a really fun game. If you want a race game, it wouldn't be my first choice, but I wouldn't argue with you if you said it was one and that you liked it.
So I think the best advice I've ever heard for RoboRally is that the instructions tell you to put like 3 map tiles together, and don't do that. Just do like 1 or something, or maybe 2. I don't know. This is a long game. And in fact, I think I've heard they're making a new sort of streamlined version of it, because this is a game that, at least for me, when I've played it, it does overstay its welcome a little bit.
Well, you can get really bad go of it where you're damaged and your lock-ins are stuck, and you could just be kind of out of the game halfway through, but you just got to wait for everyone else to hit them flags across 3 map tiles. So it can definitely feel like a slog if you get unlucky with it or you fall into a cliff too many times.
All right, cool. But you know what? 1994, so this game's been around for, like 29 years or so, and it's still really popular. So, it says a lot for the design. And we've seen a lot of programming games sort of come and go and not stick around, So, hey, good on RoboRally. I'm excited to see if they can make maybe a more streamlined version of this game. All right, so I mentioned that there were 2 games that were tied for number 2 in our People's Choice voting. And interestingly, they are both games where the person who crosses the finish line triggers the end of the game, but does not necessarily win. And the first one has already been mentioned before, so not a whole lot to say there, and that is Steampunk Rally. So, like I said earlier, it just does not rise up to one of my top 2 games that evoke the racing theme for me, but I do absolutely love the game, and it is totally a valid pick. And I'm sort of glad actually that the people chose it because I like the game so much. So, cool. Yep. And in the other game, again, the person who crosses the finish line just triggers the end of the game, is Jamaica. So in Jamaica, you are a pirate captain and you have your ship, and you're racing around the island of Jamaica. So, I mentioned that crossing the line doesn't mean you win. It does give you a lot of points, though. So being the person who got all the way across the line gives you a bunch of points. And then it's actually negative points if you're far enough back, right? Mm-hmm. So if you didn't do the job of sort of racing, you'll lose points. But it is possible to just collect treasure and load up your cargo hold with gold coins and win, even though you're in last place for the race, which is sort of interesting. But what is probably the most interesting mechanism in this game is that on your turn, if you land in a space with another player, you have to fight. So you fight with that player, and it is dice fighting, and you can allocate cannons or whatever. And then, you have to move back if you lose. But also, like, if you land in a space and you can't afford to pay for the space, the food or whatever you have to pay to be in that space, you have to move back, and then you can land on a player, and then there could be a fight, and you can move back and land on another player and fight. There's a new version of this game that maybe you can't get in more than one fight per turn. I don't remember exactly how it works because I haven't played it. I have the old version. It's a dice game too, in not just the combat, but also whoever's turn it is rolls the dice, and then they decide to allocate those dice as the day or night dice. And then you choose a card from your hand about what do you want to do? Okay, so what do I want to do with that die in the day? Well, this card says that I'm going to move forward during the day, and in the night, I'm going to load cannons, right? So it's a 4 and a 3, so I'm going to move forward 4, and then I'm going to load 3 cannons, and you got to find a place in your ship to hold that stuff. there is this system that makes you sort of clear out cargo bays to add other stuff instead of just combining things. It makes the game a little more interesting. The crew expansion for the game makes it a little more interesting because when you land at one of these ports, you can get these crew members that help you do stuff, although they take up cargo holds as well in your ship. So some interesting trade-offs. But yeah, you're racing around an island. You've got trying to get gold coins for points. You're trying to collect these treasures. You're shooting each other with cannons. It's got a lot of fun stuff going on. And, again, it's almost in that party game atmosphere because it's just sort of chaos, right? What's going on. And I really enjoy this game. We play it usually at 5 or 6 players. Although my wife and one of our friends have played the 2-player version of the game, which has a ghost ship, and they say it's great. The 2-player with the ghost ship. So, if you like 2-player games, maybe you should check that out as well. I think there's not a lot of good racing 2-player games. So maybe this one is.
I felt like this one rode pretty high on BGG for a long, long time, didn't it? Yeah. It rode top 5 for a long time, I think.
Top 5? No.
I don't know if you're the top 5, but
Was
it's
it
been popular for a long time.
This is a game that there is one board game review channel that plugged the heck out of this game because they really liked it.
They did.
And so it was showing up in a lot of videos. And that's the Dice Tower. And that's how I found out about it, right? They talked so much about how they liked the game, and then I watched some videos on it, and I was like, wow, 6 players, plays pretty quick, looks like fun. That's right. That's right in the space for sort of the complexity, game length, and player count for my group. So I got a copy of it, and when the crew came out, I got a copy of that, and I'm super happy with it. I haven't gotten the new version because I don't feel like there's anything wrong with the old version. So
the first time I played Jamaica was on the Dice Tower cruise, their copy, while we were in port in Jamaica.
How very dramatic, John.
Yeah, it's gaming through themes.
Yeah. And then he got arrested for he tried to take over the ship and got arrested. It wasn't cool.
It was I was just running around in the ship yelling mutiny, and it didn't work. It didn't work at all.
That's because everybody was off scuba diving,
Yeah, nobody was there. That's why I thought I could succeed. It was my best chance. Fewest people on board, I went for it.
Sure.
I pushed my lust, and I ended up in a brig.
He was trying to hotwire the ship.
I was laying on the horn with my elbow. I didn't realize it. It was a whole thing.
Well, I wish I would have gone. I'd have been with you.
We'd have succeeded. I needed a second man.
Find a nickel every time I had to say that.
Nice. All right. So we talked about a lot of racing games here, but we have by no means covered all the good racing games. There's several. I could make a top 10 on good racing games. No problem without even having to think about it. So anyway, like racing. Go. Yeah. Okay. Thunder Alley. But, if you like racing games, I think a lot of people believe that board games don't translate, sports and things like that don't translate very well to board games. And I would say in the most cases that's true. But there's a lot of people.
You never played Blood Bowl, have you?
Yeah. I have. And so, there's always, but that's the thing, right? There's thousands of board games out there, and there are thousands of bad games out there. And there are a lot of bad sports games out there, but don't be deterred. There are a lot of good racing games. We listed a bunch right here. So go check them out if they sound interesting to you.
You said don't be deterred?
Don't be deterred.
Okay. It sounded like you said don't be a turd.
Don't do that either.
That's what I heard, and I wasn't going to say anything, but I'm just wondering.
You know what? You be you. If you want to be a turd, go ahead. I don't care.
Remember, here at Just Got Played, we tell you, push your lust and be a turd. Until next time.
Oh, now I have a title for the video. All right. Well, until next time, I'm Steven. That's Patrick. That's John. We're from Just Got Played. Thanks for joining us. If you want to come tell us how ridiculous we are, there's a link in the YouTube description to our Discord channel. We hang out there, so just come, chat with us. If you look down there, there's also links to all of our social media, so you can follow us there if you would prefer. But if you enjoyed this video, whether or not the, status of Turd Talk, give us a like, please, and hit the subscribe button. Both of those things do help us out. But yeah, thanks for watching.
Bye.